I think that connecting with other families that have successfully adopted is really important. And so I think, if you mention to a handful of your friends, we're considering adoption, because for a lot of people, this is still relatively private when they initiate the home study process. For some families, they've put it all out there, and other families are keeping it closer to their heart.
Yeah.
And I think that if you mention it to a few friends, you're going to find somebody who either has adopted, who has placed a child for adoption, has a friend that has adopted. It's really good to connect with other people. I think that's really important.
Your dream is to become a mom. My dream is to help you get there. I'm Rebecca Greenspan, a single mom through domestic adoption and an adoption consultant for over a decade. I'll be your guide, along with other adoption professionals and members of the adoption constellation, walking you step by step down this beautiful and complex path of adopting your baby. When I was going through the adoption process, I had no idea what I was doing, what I needed to know, or more importantly, who to trust. Well, after helping hundreds and hundreds of families grow through the beauty and complexity of adoption, I've learned more than a thing or two, and let me tell you, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. This isn't just another podcast sharing adoption stories, but it's for you if you're genuinely committed to diving in with an open heart, eager to learn everything there is to know about adopting a baby so that you can show up for yourself and your child in the best way possible. This podcast is for you if you're ready to put your newfound knowledge into action. Adoption isn't for the weak of heart, and it certainly isn't done when your baby gets placed in your arms. If that's what you think, I'm afraid you're living in la la land. My promise to you is to keep it real if you promise to keep digging. We'll acknowledge the hard, and we'll also celebrate the joy that is adoption. You ready? Let's do this. Do you have fears of not passing an adoption home study, maybe because of past demons or due to a medical condition you have? Have you heard about how intrusive a home study can be or how much paperwork you'll have to complete? Well, you're in for a treat today because we're going to get to the truth about all of this and more. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Amy Imber, the powerhouse behind Connecting Hearts Adoption Services. With over 2 decades in the adoption field, Amy's passion was ignited in high school when she saw a friend, adopted as an infant, reunite with her birth parents. After working in adoption for many years as an adult, Amy met her brother, who was placed for adoption as an infant more than 50 years ago. Fast forward to today, Amy Imber is not just the executive director of Connecting Hearts and the mother of 2 teenage boys. She's been the driving force since its inception in 2008. Based in Orlando, Florida, Connecting Hearts Adoption Services focuses on home studies for domestic adoptions, extending their reach across the state. Amy and her team of 12 social workers are on a mission to make the adoption journey as seamless as possible. But don't just take my word for it. Some of Amy's clients have raved about her, saying, Amy made the entire process easy. Another family highlighted how helpful Amy and her team were, providing personal care and answering all their questions. One client even shared, I'll never forget Amy personally reaching out to us with excitement the night we found out that we have been chosen by our birth mother. And if you live in the Florida area, looking for somewhere to get your home study completed, stick around because we have a special offer for you, which we will mention at the end. Welcome, Amy Imber. Nice to have you here. Let's just jump in. How did you get into this crazy world of adoption?
Thank you for having me. I got into adoption I was interested, like you initially said, when I was in high school. I had a friend who sought out her birth family, and I found it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Then when I was in high school, I said, wow, when I grow up, that's what I want to do. And that's kind of the only thing I've done. I've done work in the private sector. I've done work in the public sector, and I've been doing home studies now for the past 15 years.
Why did you think that that was something that you wanted to do? What made you so intrigued by it?
Well, I think that my friend had a really good life, and she knew that even as young as 15 and 16 when all that was happening. But she really, she had the support of her parents when finding her birth parents as well. She had the support of her adoptive parents.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very thankful, especially after she met her birth family and really got a lot of her questions answered. She was thankful for so much. And I thought, wow, that's something I would love to be a part of. I think it's hard to know what you want to be when you grow up, especially when you're so young. And it kind of ticked a lot of boxes for me.
I love that. It just pulled at your heartstring, like what happens to so many of us. So let's talk home studies. Mm-hmm. What exactly is a home study process, and why is it considered the first step in adoption? I did an entire adoption episode right before this one explaining what the adoption home study is, but I'd love to hear it from your words and talk about why it's considered the first step.
Right. So the home study is always the first step in any adoption, because no agency or attorney can actively work with a family until they are home study approved. So the home study is not only a time for us to get to learn more about our client family, but it's also our home study, at least, is about adoption education and the reality of adoption and how all of it works. We like to think that we give families the tools that they need to make good decisions in this process. And, you know, no agency or attorney would ever, you would hope that they would not want to place a child with a family that they didn't know a little something about, right? Mm-hmm. Most people do have an approved home study. It's 9 out of 10 times we're approving a family. However, it's that very small percentage of families that shouldn't be adopting that we are the most concerned about.
I want to get into that a little bit, but you said that an agency or attorney won't work with you until you have your home study. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Mm-hmm. So, you know, God forbid they match a family with a birth mother who does not have an approved home study. The home study is required by law in Florida and across the 50 states.
Ah, okay. So it's a legal document.
Correct.
That you must get. Can you walk us through the typical journey of a family, like working with you guys at Connecting Heart Services, from the initial application to the completion of the home study? What does that even look like? Yeah.
So the home study is, in the end, ends up being a document that approves somebody to be eligible to adopt. Mm-hmm. It's a collection of information all about them. Includes information about their background history, their family of origin, their siblings, where they go to high school, why they're choosing adoption, how they feel about discipline, how much money they make, their assets and liabilities, background checks, references, physicals, employment verification. Do they have health insurance? Do they have life insurance? Yeah, exactly. Check, check, check.
Wow.
All of it, how they feel about certain adoption topics, such as open adoption or sending pictures and letters after a child has been placed for adoption to their birth family. It includes information, again, I think I said, about discipline and how they feel about that and what their plans are to discipline their children as they get older.
I always found that question funny because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to discipline. I'm not a parent yet.
But all of this information is typed up into a report that approves somebody to be eligible to adopt. So worst case scenario would be that a woman selects a family for her baby without having a home study done. And then during the process, while she's pregnant, the family's home study gets denied. And then she can't place her baby with that family.
Right. So it's not so much that an attorney or an agency won't work with you until you get it, but they can't match you before you have a home study. Because I know some agencies will help you get a home study, and attorneys, if they're doing matching, probably, they can't match you until you have a home study. Is that
There's
correct?
not much they can do for you until you are home study approved.
Okay. You mentioned finances, like checking how much you make. Mm-hmm. I know that I have talked to a lot of families over the years who are nervous about that. Like, is there a certain threshold, and is it a legal threshold, or does everybody doing home studies look for something different? Like, how do you determine?
So there's not a legal requirement for you to make X amount of dollars a year in order to be eligible to adopt.
Okay.
And I would imagine that every home study agency or any agency doing home studies kind of has their own threshold or their own policies about this. I think what a standard for us is that we want to make sure that your income exceeds your expenses. At the end of the month, there needs to be money left at the end of the month because we all know children are expensive. And so once you get your child home, you have to feed him or her, clothe him or her, and hopefully one day pay for their education if at all possible. And so that all costs a lot of money. So we don't have like a financial requirement or a minimum that you have to make. We need to see that at the end of the month, you have money left.
That makes so much sense. And I want to ask about one other scenario because this recently happened to a family. Like, they were in the middle of adopting and lost their job. Like, one of them lost their job. The other one, I think, was maybe even a stay-at-home mom, but they had a good amount of money saved. And I think he was getting severance at the time. So what happens in that situation? Like, does that mean they automatically can't get approved?
Well, if they're home study, well, I think it would depend on where they are in this process.
Okay.
My concern in that wouldn't be so much that they didn't have money saved in the bank, but then you have a health insurance issue as well, oftentimes.
Okay. Okay. So you have to
there's not a firm and hard answer for that. Like, I have families that are independently wealthy. I mean, most people aren't, but I definitely have families that they are independently wealthy, and I'm thinking of a client right now off the top of my head. They don't work. They don't need to. And so, lucky them, but, right. Let that be our worst problem. But, but they don't work, but they have private health insurance. They have plenty of money in the bank. They don't ever need to work. So I think a lot of it kind of depends on their circumstances.
Yeah.
That's not a question with one answer, I don't think.
Wow. What a powerful role you play if some of this is objective, right?
Yes.
And I'd imagine that's, wow. I never really thought about that. And there are also legalities, right? So how does that work? Are there certain laws in every state, and does every state have the same laws, or?
Right. So every state has their own laws. And so in Florida,
that makes it crazy.
Yes, it does. In Florida, the law is very specific as to why someone could not be approved. And a lot of that has to do with a background check.
Okay, so let's go into that. So, you mentioned that very few people don't get approved. What would make them not get approved? I mean, we know one, if their expenses way exceed their income.
Correct.
That could possibly, depending on the whole picture.
Correct.
But what are some other reasons somebody wouldn't get approved?
If you've been convicted of a crime against children.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you are on the sex offender registry, that would be a problem.
Have you seen this a lot?
I'm sorry. I've never had a family where somebody is on the sex offender registry.
Whoosh. Thank God. Okay.
Yeah. If you have if you've been convicted of a felony within the past 5 years in Florida, that prohibits you from being eligible to adopt.
Okay, here's one. What if somebody has a DUI on the record?
That is not a disqualifier. Now, however, if you, and depending on the charge, a lot of DUIs are misdemeanors. So if you had a DUI yesterday and I'm visiting you today, I would have a concern. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm visiting you today and you had a DUI 10 years ago, and that's the only one you've ever had, probably not going to be a concern. But if you've had multiple DUIs over a period of time, that would be a concern.
Got it. Okay. And then here's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were you going to say? Something else?
I was going to say, for example, I had a family where I was visiting with them where he ended up telling me during the visit that he was not able to start his car without breathing into a tube.
Oh.
That was a problem.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he'd had multiple DUIs.
Here's another scenario. Everybody I know, okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but a lot of people I know suffer from anxiety and depression, are maybe on some medication for that and see a therapist. Is that something to worry about?
No. Mm-mm. We tell families too, like the first person to always take care of is yourself.
Say that again for the people in the back of the room.
Yeah, right. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else.
Right.
So no, if that was a disqualifier,
nobody would be adopting.
There'd be a lot of people not adopting. That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah, no.
I know. And people are always so scared about that. But you did mention, I think you mentioned this, you get background checked, right? You get you get fingerprinted and everything. Mm-hmm. So if you are concerned about something, and I tell everybody this, bring it up like before you even start. Like just Absolutely. Get it off your chest, say the thing, ask the questions, and then you'll be able to breathe and move forward. Most likely it's not going to be an issue, but if it is, you'll learn what you need to do about it and
Absolutely.
And yeah, do the damn thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
And we've had plenty of clients where they've called us for a home study, but they're concerned about their background check. And I've told them, you know what, just go get fingerprinted. The results are sent to me electronically. Get fingerprinted. You don't need, other than paying to get fingerprinted, I'm not going to charge you a fee for that. Just get fingerprinted and let's see what they have to say. And then let's determine from there whether or not you decide to move forward, whether you can move forward. But yeah, we've definitely done that for families.
Okay, cool. I remember when I got my home study, I was living in Chicago in a 1-bedroom condo, but I had this little office. And so I was like, please just tell me, am I going to get accepted or not? Because I don't know if I have enough room. I don't have 2 bedrooms. And I know at least in Illinois at the time, there was a law saying that the baby has to have its own separate room and it has to be X amount, measuring X amount. And my office was the exact size that it needed to be. And I figured out I could fit a mini crib into my office. There is such a thing as a mini crib. Yes. And it was perfect for 2 years. And then we moved. But I was able to breathe after I found out. And it just so happened that my social worker said, you know what, Becca, even if it wasn't, we would figure out a way. You could put the baby in your room and you could sleep on your pull-out couch for the first year if you had to. But, I only say that not to say, oh, there's ways to skirt the law, because that's not the point. The point is, I don't think you are looking for reasons not to approve someone. Am I correct?
No. And I think that is one of the myths that like we're looking for problems.
Right. That's what's on TV, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, we want to help people. And I make sure that people understand that. I think sometimes when we get to somebody's home, they're so nervous because that's exactly what they think, that we're looking for problems. Where once we leave, they're like, oh my gosh, these people are our biggest cheerleaders.
Yes.
Because we want this to happen for people. We want to help you. We want to see you be successful. We are not looking to make things more difficult for you.
I loved my social worker so much. I was so sad when I had my last meeting with her. I'm like, no, I need you in my life. But so can you elaborate a little bit? Actually, going back to the process, you had named all the millions of things that have to be done. Mm-hmm. I think you said everything except for actually going into the home. I don't know if you mentioned that. So tell me where that comes in.
Correct. Not only do we collect all of this paperwork and all of these background checks and all of this stuff, but it actually also includes a visit to the family's home and a tour of their home. Okay. So we're not taking a white glove and checking for dust bunnies, or we're not opening drawers and whatnot, but we are going to ask for a tour of your entire home, which is going to include, your primary bedroom and your bathroom and, what room you plan to put your child into. We want to see all the rooms in your house.
Do I need to make sure it's totally clean before you come?
You do not. I would say that most people do.
Yeah, it's a good excuse, if nothing else.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. So many people have told me, like, my house has never been cleaner before today, but that's not required.
Well, your home is great. You can send me a thank you note afterwards. What?
I said their home is lived in. We expect it to be lived in.
Right. And you don't need to make an apple pie, although I'm sure your social worker would love a slice.
Yeah. My rule of thumb is when I will take something to drink.
Okay.
But if I eat all of the food that I've been offered, oh my gosh. But yeah, no. I usually stick to a drink.
And you're doing
water or tea or something like that.
Yeah. So how long are you in the home, and what are you looking for?
Yeah. We're looking to make sure that your home is safe for a child. If you have exposed wires and things like that, which I've never seen before, that would be a problem. But I have visited with families here in Florida, like after a hurricane, and their kitchen is not in tip-top shape because of some sort of construction or work going on because of damage to a home. That's not necessarily a problem either. But we're looking to make sure that your home is safe for children. And Florida, one of the big issues we have is swimming pools and pool safety. And so the law is not specific as to what is required for a pool. As far as safety is concerned, we require that our families have a pool fence around their pool. There's nothing safer than a pool fence around the pool. And so people sometimes don't like that, but afterwards they're like, oh, thank God.
Like a fenced in area.
Yeah. Like there's a screen that you can put that's about 5 feet, maybe 4.5 or 5 feet tall, that people install around the deck of their pool. For pool safety. And so we require a pool fence.
That makes sense.
And that is kind of, that varies from agency to agency.
Okay. And how long are you usually in the home? Like, are you also talking to them about anything when you're in the home?
Yes, absolutely. We're there for anywhere between 2 and maybe 4 hours at most.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. 4 hours.
Even for little houses?
Yeah, I know, right? Yes. Regardless of the size of your house. A lot of it depends on the conversation. We have some families who I think they're so nervous they barely even talk. And they're just doing a lot of listening. I'm like conversation. And so when there's conversation and lots of questions, that can take a little bit longer.
Okay. So that's where you're asking all those questions about what made you decide adoption, what kind of support do you have, all of that. Yeah. Tell me about the role of education. You had mentioned at the beginning when you were describing what the home study is. How do you educate your families? What does that mean to you? It's a word that gets thrown out a lot, and I use it all the time because I can't think of another word. But elaborate on the role of education in ensuring that successful outcomes for both the parent and the child happen, especially concerning trauma, which is another word that we hear all the time. Before we go on, we're going to take a quick break, but don't go away. We still have so much to talk about. The Adoption Roadmap podcast is sponsored by the Adoption Roadmap Academy, the only online program of its kind for hopeful adoptive parents like you who want step-by-step guidance, preparing for your home study, creating a compelling adoption profile book, choosing the right agencies, and more so that you can bring your baby home sooner. As an adoption consultant and adoptive mom who's been where you are, I'm going to guide you step by step through everything you need to know about the domestic infant adoption journey from home study to finalization. And the great part is you get to do it at your own pace with a supportive community behind you. The Adoption Roadmap Academy is a step-by-step guide to domestic infant adoption for hopeful individuals and families who are sick and tired of waiting forever. It's the first and only self-paced, adoption consultant-led program that shows you exactly how to navigate the domestic adoption process from home study to finalization. With our proven 4-step adoption roadmap model, you're going to be able to save time you can't make up, hours and weeks and even months of tedious legwork and research are done for you. You're going to be able to go at your own pace. No matter what else is going on in life, nobody's going to be breathing down your throat. You are going to be able to gain and keep momentum because everything is going to be spoon-fed for you in exactly the way you need. You are going to possibly even save money by knowing how to vet situations and working with the right agencies. It could save you a lot of heartache. You are going to be able to access this course anytime, anywhere, and get expert guidance and support, not only by me, but also by an amazing community who know exactly what you are walking through. Here's what you can expect inside. You'll be getting streaming videos, worksheets, bonus resources, an adoption profile creation, agency contacts, live streams to connect with other people, and unending education, all using our 4-step proprietary adoption roadmap model. Plus, you'll be receiving a bonus mindset step that I highly recommend for everyone. So if you're interested in starting your adoption journey and ready to fast forward and simplify your domestic adoption process, please email the word academy to support@rgadoptionconsulting.com today, and we'll get you started. Elaborate on the role of education in ensuring that successful outcomes for both the parent and the child.
I would say adoption education is so important. We want to make sure that the children that get placed for adoption with our families grow up to be happy, healthy, and well-adjusted adults. And so the most important thing we can do is make sure that their parents are well-equipped to manage whatever it is that presents itself as their children get older. And so making sure that they're informed regarding trauma that surrounds adoption, babies placed for, sometimes people think that babies placed for adoption as newborns don't experience trauma. There's definitely a loss involved in that. And
I was one of those people. Yeah.
And so, absolutely. The different states have different requirements as to the adoption component. And in Florida, the challenge sometimes is that DCF, the Department of Children and Families, a licensing agent for every agency across Florida. Sometimes they have their own administrative code. And sometimes the rules are different depending on who your licensing agent is. And so, and then not only can it be different with your licensing agent, the rules can be different a little bit from agency to agency. So for our home study, we require 5 hours of education, and it's all online, and people can go at their own pace, and they can choose what they learn about. We want to make sure that people are choosing topics that are relevant to their family. For example, there's one training we do with the New Parents Academy, which is a lot about like newborn infant care and whatnot. That would not be an appropriate training for somebody to complete if they're adopting a 6-year-old.
Right.
Like, you're kind of past that stage. And so we want for families to choose training that would apply to them. But there's all kinds of topics. We use adoption learning partners in creating a family, as well as the New Parents Academy.
Great. And I will link all of those in the show notes so that people can check them out.
I can absolutely send you that. And then we also use the Red Cross. CPR is an option that families have as well. So,
but not required. CPR is not required in Florida.
It is not, but it is in other places.
Yeah, I know in other places it wasn't for me either, but I highly recommend. It's a good one to have. Every child chokes, and you're going to freak out when they do. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So education is required. I know in some states, but not all states.
Correct.
That's great. And I know for our families that we work with, we have monthly people coming in and speaking And we always keep those videos to present to our families for ongoing education if they need ours. So I know that different people there's all sorts of education out there.
Yes.
You have to seek it out, and it doesn't end after you adopt.
No.
Just want to throw that in there. So I'm curious if in your eyes you have seen adoption impacted either since COVID that you're still experiencing today, and even more so by the overturn of Roe v. Wade.
Right. I get asked that question a lot, the Roe v.
Yeah.
Wade. But as for COVID first, during COVID, things went berserko. I think a lot of us thought, oh my gosh, all these people are at home, people aren't working. There's going to be a lot of babies born under circumstances that are not ideal, and people are going to be turning to adoption. And that is not what happened. But what did happen is that people were home and they were working, some of them, and they were like, gosh, our house is really quiet. What are we waiting for? There's never a good time to adopt a baby. Let's do this now. So while the agencies and attorneys that place babies for adoption were often really struggling because their phones weren't ringing and it was very quiet, an agency like mine, where all we do is the home study, I've never been busier in all the years I've been doing this.
You and I both, yeah. For people who were working solely with the hopeful parents, we were busier than ever.
I have never been busier. It was very stressful. I have never had more clients. It was just crazy. Yeah. And so what that related to is there had never been more people waiting because people weren't being selected because babies weren't being placed for adoption, not near as often. And so things have always kind of been like this with adoption, right? Like there's always been more waiting families than there are birth parents, but then it got to be, an even bigger discrepancy with way more families waiting. And so,
how is that playing out now?
We definitely have families that are adopting babies. Things have kind of calmed down, and we still have people wanting to adopt, but people are back to choosing adoption for whatever reason.
Do you think it's back to where it was before COVID?
Maybe not quite, but real close. I think so.
Yeah, I think
it's definitely getting there. Yeah, it's definitely getting there. But absolutely, COVID was the craziest I've ever been doing this work. Yeah, it was bonkers. Totally bonkers. But yeah. So but then as for Roe v. Wade, I've had a lot of people ask me about that. And I don't think that I have seen an influx of families adopting babies because of adoption law, because of abortion law. I have not seen that. And that's obviously a very hot topic in adoption. And, I think whatever choice a woman makes regarding her pregnancy is her choice to make. And that's maybe doesn't sit well with all of the people that do this kind of work.
Yeah.
But that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I don't know that it's affecting the hopeful parents as much. I've heard some agencies say they have seen an influx in certain states in the country and others not see much difference at all. So I think time maybe will still tell. I'm not sure that's the state of the world is still an influx around all of that. But moving on. Yeah, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I think that if you really, if you're pregnant and abortion is an option for you, if you are firm in your commitment, you're going to figure out a way.
Right.
So,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. What are some common myths or misconceptions about adoption that you often encounter, and what do you and your team do to debunk them?
Yeah. I think one of the myths is that if you have a serious medical condition, such as, like HIV.
Okay.
That you can't adopt. That's not true. HIV
That's
used to be a
interesting.
death sentence 25 years ago, 30 years ago, but it's not anymore. You can live a long and healthy life with HIV. And so, and we definitely have families that have adopted and have HIV and are healthy and happy, and everybody's doing well. So I think that's a myth. I think that people think that being a homeowner is required in order to be eligible
Mm-hmm.
to adopt. That is not true. You can be a renter. You can live with your parents and adopt a baby.
Right.
You can have roommates and adopt a baby. However, that's not a disqualifier whatsoever. Um,
But it is worth mentioning if you are living with somebody, they also have to go through the home study process, correct?
Absolutely. We have to meet them. They have to complete the background checks. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's a myth that, adoption is people are selling their babies,
Mm.
and there's nobody that I know that sells babies. I think that in adoption, you do pay for a service.
Yes.
And I think that if you can help the birth mother while she's pregnant with her expenses, you should.
Mm.
She's giving you her baby, and she probably needs some help financially. That's part of the reason why she's placing her baby for adoption. Is usually financial crisis is the biggest reason.
Right.
And so I think that that's a myth. I think that it takes years to adopt a baby. I mean, we have families where it takes 2 months and families where it takes 2 years. It
Mm-hmm.
just, every situation is different. And when people ask me how long does it take, I tell them a lot of times it depends on their preferences.
Yeah.
You can have preferences in this, and that includes your preferences, your budget, your willingness to travel. That all factors into how long this can take you. Just because you live in Florida or whatever state you live in doesn't mean that you will adopt in that state. And so the more you're open to, the more opportunities that there are. So I think that's a
Absolutely.
big factor as well.
Absolutely. Now, I noticed on your website when I was doing some research that you have this little human rights campaign seal of recognition on your site.
Yes.
What's the significance of that?
So the Human Rights Campaign is the HRC's All Children, All Families campaign. With the Human Rights Campaign is just about making sure that all families know that they can adopt, and that being LGBTQ should not be a barrier to adoption.
I love that.
So we completed their program, I don't even know how many years ago. It's been a while. We completed their program, and we are, what we have is what's called the Seal of Recognition from the Human Rights Campaign. And there's a handful of agencies across the country that have their Seal of Recognition. We're one of 2 agencies in Florida that has that,
Oh, wow.
which means that we are well qualified to work with those in the LGBTQ community.
I didn't even know that that was a thing, but I'm definitely going to be looking into it now
Yeah,
because we work
yeah.
with everybody too. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It's something we're really proud of.
Yeah. So as we're kind of slowly getting to the end of our conversation, I'd love for you to share any heartwarming or memorable experiences of families you've worked with that kind of illustrate the impact of
Yeah.
adoption in their lives.
Well, so my agency has a private Facebook group for just our agency families.
Okay.
So every once in a while, people will ask to join our group, and they have to answer a couple questions. And if they answer, the question, I think the only question is, did Connecting Hearts Adoption complete a home study for you? And if they say
Yeah.
no, then obviously we don't add them to our group.
Right.
But we have a group of probably about 900 plus families.
Wow.
And every once in a while, I will get a phone call or an email when there's an agency or an attorney that's looking for a specific family for an expectant mom that they don't have within their bank of waiting families.
Mm-hmm.
So we easily have probably over 100 families well over 100 families in 15 years. But in the past year, we probably have 50 families, maybe a little less, that have all been matched and placed simply because I shared a situation that was emailed to me. So that's always awesome. I just
love
visited
that.
yesterday with a family that lives not far from me that they, when I got to their home, I asked them if they had signed up with any agency or attorney after their home study had been done. And it's been about 9 months since their initial home study was completed, and they hadn't. And they had just kept putting themselves out there for a lot of the situations that I was sharing with them, because my agency does not place babies for adoption, and we do not work with birth parents. We solely provide the home study service.
Yeah.
But when I get an email or a phone call, I obviously share those with our waiting families. And so, yeah, and they got a phone. I got a phone call on a Saturday afternoon about a baby born. I shared the information online. I forwarded some emails to those that were interested, and they got picked and literally became parents like the next day. So that's always exciting.
Yeah.
And that happens, I don't want to say often, but often enough to mention it.
Yeah.
I always remember there's this one family, oh my gosh, they lived out in like DeLand or DeBerry, like out the other side of Orlando. And I went to visit them the day before they were expecting me. Like I messed up my appointment.
Oops. Oops, they hadn't cleaned their house yet.
No, they answered the door in their pajamas. It must have been like 9:30 in the morning. They answered the door in their pajamas. I felt so bad. I was like, guys, I can totally come back tomorrow.
You're like, I promise you, this is not part of the plan. This isn't what we do.
They were like making breakfast. There were eggs on the stove. Like it was like a whole deal. And they were like, you know what? You're here. Come on in. Let's get this done. Like they were such good sports about it. But if they had wanted me to come back the next day, I totally would have done that. But I will never forget that. That was so, it's funny now. It was not funny then.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that. And that's awesome.
You love a client with a good sense of humor too.
Yes.
So appreciate it.
Absolutely. Especially when they're so nervous already. And they're just like, they didn't even have time to be nervous because they had
no. I mean, their house wasn't like in disarray, but they like clearly had not showered yet for the day. They had their breakfast. Like, I don't know if they'd had their first cup of coffee. And
see, you don't even need to shower to get home study approved.
Yes. No, it is not a requirement. It is suggested, but it is not.
Right. That's hilarious.
But yeah, so those are a couple things.
I love that. What advice would you give to individuals or couples considering adoption, particularly for people who feel so overwhelmed or uncertain about the process of adoption?
I think that connecting with other families that have successfully adopted is really important. And so I think, if you mention to a handful of your friends, we're considering adoption, because for a lot of people, this is still relatively private when they initiate the home study process. For some families, they've put it all out there, and other families are keeping it closer to their heart. Yeah. But I think that if you mention it to a few friends, you're going to find somebody who either has adopted, who has placed a child for adoption, has a friend that has adopted. It's really good to connect with other people. I think that's really important.
That sense of community.
Oh, absolutely.
Is so important. And I always tell people that it's not, your family and friends are very well-meaning people, but unless you've gone through this process, you have no clue, one, how to support somebody who is. So oftentimes you need to let them know how they can support you best, but just being able to have a conversation with somebody who gets it is so important. So that's great advice.
I think that's one of the things I like best about my Facebook group, because so many of these people have become friends with each other.
Yes. And, doesn't that make you feel great?
They get together for play dates periodically. They become, friends on social media. It's somebody to email or text when, oh my gosh, something's happening. I have to tell somebody, but I'm not sure who I can trust. Like it's a great way to connect with other people.
That's awesome. And especially for your community who all live in the same state, there's probably a lot of people who live near each other. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And they adopt across Florida and across the United States. So it's not like, they're just adopting through my agency. My agency doesn't do that. So, there's lots of people with lots of strong opinions and that they're willing to share.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to end with some quick fire, rapid questions. First one is, what's the best compliment you've ever gotten from a client?
Probably their thank you. Probably thank you is really, really nice to hear.
Yeah. What's been your biggest failure when working with a hopeful family, and what did you learn from it?
That's a tough question.
Maybe showing up on a doorstep on the
way. Really, right? But they took it in stride, so I wouldn't call it a failure. I would call that an oops.
Maybe that's a better.
I don't think that, and I mean, I'm certainly not perfect, but I think I wouldn't call it a failure. I would say it's disappointing when somebody presents that. I think that the most important thing somebody can do during this process is be honest. And when you are not honest, that jeopardizes us being able to approve your home study. And I think that has probably been the biggest challenge, is when somebody has not been honest.
Yeah.
That is hard.
Yeah. Especially when it's coming from a place of fear on their part, and it might not mean they're a bad person, but yeah. What's your biggest pet peeve?
So a lot of what we do is electronic, right? There's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
So sometimes when people are not as tech savvy, it's just a little frustrating. Yeah.
I get it. What's one thing about your business or this journey of your adoption business that you didn't expect?
I mean, probably all of it, as silly as that sounds. I never thought that I would own my own business and then find it to be successful. Like, that's two different things. And so it's been pretty awesome. I mean, I have a pretty cool job. And then to have all of these women that work with me be awesome at what they do, and to all represent Connecting Hearts Adoption in such an amazing light. Because in adoption, all you have is your reputation. And we're really, really lucky to have a good one.
That's amazing. So I know you have a special offer for our listeners today. Do you want to tell us about that?
Absolutely. We are offering a discount to any of your listeners. There's a $100 application fee that is usually sent with the initial application for a home study with us, and we will forego that for anybody who mentions your name as how they found us.
Okay, so just mention Rebecca Greenspan or the Adoption Roadmap podcast. That's so generous. Thank you. Where can our listeners find you?
Yes, we are licensed in Florida only. Our home study is good across Florida and across the country. And everybody can find us online at connectingheartsadoption.com.
Great, and we'll add that link before I let you go. 3 words to describe adoption.
Well, love, patience, and perseverance.
Love it. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. If you did, I have a few favors to ask of you. First, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, I'd love to hear your takeaways. Please write a review and let me know what you liked. And if you have a question or a suggestion on what you'd like to hear, I'd love to hear that too. Please shoot me an email at support@rgadoptionconsulting.com and let me know what you'd like to hear about. And if you have a question, I may just answer it online. Thanks again for listening. Tune in every Wednesday and Friday morning for a brand new episode of the Adoption Roadmap podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.